morning, everybody, and welcome to Hometown Cable, program called What's Going On Here. My name is Bob Venn. Calvin Castine has the camera, and for the second time in 2 months, well, maybe a month in actual date, we're in Dannemora, New York. We're here before the snow flies, and we're at the home of Terrance Gilroy. This is Mr. Gilroy sitting next to me. Terrance, good morning.
How are you today?
And we're here for several reasons. Of course, as you know, VE Day is coming up very shortly, and the end of the complete end of World War II. VE Day was back in May, and then the war ended. People were still fighting in the Pacific, and we want to commemorate that in some way. And we've asked people to call in and to talk with us, and we haven't had many people volunteering. So we have a man here who's making a study of World War II and has lots of records, and he is presently the village historian of the village of Dannemora.
Correct.
There aren't too many villages in the county, are there, Terrance?
No, they're not. They're very few, and very few historians that will want to put things together of the past, and especially during this time here with the 50th anniversary, what happened here in Clinton County during World War II. And this is what led me to get into this, and I started out doing my own research as to what was in the newspapers relative to my service time in there. After I once started this, I noted any number of people I played baseball with in Ross's Point, Champlain, Alcona Moor. Some of them were killed, and others were going from base to base in the services. And I said, well, I know where I can end all of this within a short period of time. I can go over to then County Historian Addie Shields and say, where are the records? And she said, well, I'm sorry, we can't find them. So that's when I decided that after that I'm going to go through and document those people from the county who served in the various categories, and going to put them down into the book. And then I'm also going to incorporate those from all of the towns within the county as far as is humanly possible. It's too bad the records are missing, but we'll do the best, Bob, that we can to correct this situation and have that available later on as to these.
Okay, but before we get into what you're going to do, let's find out who you are and what you've been doing, Terrance. Tell us a little bit about your family. Way back, as a matter of fact, your grandfather, you said, I think your grandfather was Civil War?
Yeah, Edward was down on the turnpike, and why he went in from Vermont, I don't know. I think probably it was because they may have offered more money to go into at that time. He went over there and enlisted and served from the Vermont, one of the infantry is over there, and was injured at the Battle of Savage Station, 1862. He received wounds to both of his legs, and came back eventually. He lived there on the homestead that his father, my great-grandfather, had taken land there in the town of Beekmantown. Then, of course, my father come along, and he was supervisor for the town of Beekmantown just prior, well, around World War I. And then a job opening here came, so he left and come up here to work in the prison.
What was his name?
Leo.
And your mother? Her name was?
Well, she was a Connors. We were from Peru. Her parents lived in Plattsburgh. Their Grandpa Connors was chief of police there in the early days of the police department in Plattsburgh.
Well, you're either military or law enforcement, this family here.
Well,
have you always obeyed the law completely?
Well, I found my... I'm going to answer that. Yes.
Yeah, all right.
I even dotted my I's in the income tax.
All right. Okay, so that the Gilroys came to Dannemora, then you're talking
1920.
1920. And how many brothers or sisters in your family?
I have 2 brothers and 1 sister.
All right, your name?
We're all...
Tell us how...
Well, Carlton is the oldest, and my younger brother Malcolm lives down here on the General Manor Road, and my sister Barbara. And Bailey lives next door to us right here in the town of Saranac, but the village of Dannemora.
Now, certainly, one of your nephews is very, very familiar with Hometown Cable, does all of the talking at all the soccer games. Kieran?
Kieran.
Kieran.
Yeah.
And his voice
Josie.
is very, very familiar. And Josie Cliff, yes, she was Josie Cliff.
Right.
And his father, you say, is Carlton, very active in the KFC. I know, we've see him often. All right, and then you were born here in Dannemora?
Right.
Came right here? Went to school here in Dannemora?
Graduated, went into service,
Uh-huh.
1942. And
What service were you in?
went into the United States Navy.
Uh-huh.
Was four of us at that time, Robert Jarvis and Jack Kern, Art Wing, and myself.
Is Jarvis the man who was the conservation department?
Right.
Oh yes,
Lives
we've seen
down
his
here.
name
Yeah,
an awful
West
lot. Yeah. You mentioned your sister married to a Bailey. Was that the Bailey Ford?
No,
No?
no, these were Baileys more or less out of Standish.
Okay. All right. So let's just talk about your service a little bit. You were in the Navy. What kind of duty did you have in the Navy?
We wound up with anti-submarine patrol. That's the picture here. Well, this was
Okay.
it was a twin-engine plane. Something.
You were in a Navy plane. You weren't on the water.
No, we never served on water.
You never got seasick at all, did you? Huh?
Well, I got seasick when we went over from Norfolk to North Africa. Yeah, and people couldn't understand how you could be in the Navy and yet not on board ship. They just, how come? Well, and we come home and you had two uniforms, a white uniform and a blue, and then people would say, well, what service are you in? Well, I'm in the Navy. Well, this guy's in the Navy. How can you,
Yeah.
didn't realize that you had two uniforms. But this plane here, it was quite an aircraft for its day. As a matter of fact, one of the fellows that served in one of the other squadrons was out in the Pacific. These planes outflew the Japanese Zero.
Is that right?
Well, Japanese were amazed that we had a plane that would go by them.
Now, these were the bombers? In
Yeah.
a way? You bombed for submarine.
Right. Anti-submarine patrol.
How many men on a ship
There
like
was
that?
five. There was
Five?
a pilot, co-pilot, radio, mechanic, and I was the ordnanceman, which was more or less the turret gunner in this plane. It was a 5.50 caliber firing off the nose with an additional two out of the turret. So you could put forward 7.50 caliber machine guns, and in some cases they almost cut some of these vessels in the Pacific in half with just the gunfire.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So you served most of your time on what was the plane called?
Ventura.
The Ventura.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was a twin-engine plane, and the only problem with it was that it was, as you can see, the engines were all forward. I understand if you had a problem in them, for every foot forward, you went down 9. So it was just nose heavy, and in the beginning, there was a lot of these that were lost in service and crashes.
Uh-huh.
I got into it in our history of our squadron, and I think we had something like 20 some odd men who were killed in crashes in the beginning. But by the time we got into them, they'd had a lot of the bugs squared away, and things worked out well.
And you were Pacific or Atlantic?
Atlantic.
Atlantic Fleet, huh? Okay.
We came back and had the Uncle Harry. I always thought well of him. Had he not dropped that atomic bomb, within a month, we were out in Norman, Oklahoma, going back to ordnance school. We would have been headed for the Pacific. And
Now, where were you stationed? Where did you fly from?
Fort Leote, French Morocco,
All right.
just above Casablanca.
Uh-huh.
We used to go up a lot to fly out of Gibraltar, especially in their area when we're down there in North Africa, and the fog would roll in, and we couldn't use the runway. So the day before, we'd always leave and go up to Gibraltar. It was one of the few places we could get where you could stateside life for whatever.
Now, you didn't go in big squadrons of 20 and 30 to bomb a city. Were you flying three
No, we more or less would patrol individually.
individually, up
Yeah.
and down?
We had a triangular spot up in the Strait of Gibraltar, but there would be more than one plane accommodating the area, so that we had any number of planes. I think our squadron was something like 25, 27 planes. Of course, you had those that flying and those that were on the ground getting repairs and stuff, but that was more or less our squadron there. One of the odd things, we're talking about intelligence. The Germans never realized that when they would come up out of the ocean at night to radio to Berlin for more information, that there was 3 places on the globe where they would pick these up and pinpoint more or less where these submarines were. And in some cases they would send out B-24s, if it was close enough with the flight range of the Venturas. They would send them out early in the morning to see if they could come in and get rid of them. But the only thing was that, and some of these things, they were a little too late. And our last squadron commander was telling that after the war, he was notified over there to go out into the Strait of Gibraltar and there to pick up a German submarine at a certain location. And he said they flew out there, and sure enough, there was a German submarine on the surface, but there was also 5 others that were there with them. We had never had any idea that they were there. And they escorted the whole group into Gibraltar. And that was what I say, with our intelligence, we thought we were way ahead, but we were not.
Okay. The person on your screen is Terrance Gilroy. We're talking about World War II, and particularly Pacific later, and the end of World War II, and we'll take a short break and come right back. Thanks for watching Hometown Cable, and my first chance to meet Mr. Gilroy. We're going to talk about some of the other things he's done before we get really into our story. Be right back. This man has no beginning and no end, so we're going to be going around in circles here. But we'll leave the service now. You got discharged from where? Then what happened to Terrance Gilroy?
Got discharged out of Lido Beach, Long Island, February 5th of 1946. I came back home here and worked at jobs, other odd jobs, until I got a job working for the state of New York in what was then the Dannemora Hospital for the criminal insane, which is now the annex. And then after taking the statewide exam, I went to work at Clinton Prison in 1948. And I worked there until 1981 and retired. So.
Now, it sounds like a promotion in a way when you go from the hospital over to the prison. Is that true? Is it a better grade, better pay, or better working conditions? Why would you go from the hospital to the prison?
At that time, there was about $700 difference in pay, and as long as I was eligible to go to the prison to work, sure I would. I found a difference in the people you worked with as at the state hospital. Many times you had to have a lot more reserve because they, being on the insane list as it is, were harder to work with than the normal person when you told them, well, we got to do this, and they understood it and got up and finished the job, where the others would kind of slack off. You had to keep after them all the time.
How long were you at the hospital? You say about 7 months?
Well, it was a little over a year.
All right. Now, somewhere along the line there, are you married yet at this point?
Well, we got married in 1947. My wife here, she was going to college in Plattsburgh, and come home and looking for activities during the daytime hours, and also having missed so much in service, because we never had any what you call nightlife. Every place that we were at was going to school and stuff. It was only for a few weeks, and you never got to know the situation as to the community or into the people. And so when we come home, we got back into playing baseball and basketball here in the area, and against people like Kenny Brothers and these that got killed in World War II. And it was just right back into the lifestyle that I had prior to going into service in 42.
So you were an athlete when you were in high school, too?
Well, I was on the teams. We played baseball and basketball. That was the principal. We had a lot of good competition. Ross's Point High School and Champlain, Altona, Moores.
Yes. Peru. That was that CCIL league then.
Plattsburgh, PHS, MAI, St. John's.
I met a man on one of these streets coming down here not long ago, and he said he used to play baseball. He worked at the prison, and he remembered going up and playing for Rouse's Point. I cannot remember his name. He's probably 70 years old, and he was talking about, because Rouse's Point had some great baseball teams over the years, and Lime Mountain, I think, were the two prime baseball teams in the area. Of course, Altona came in later, but around this point, Lime Mountain has some great teams.
There was, I think there's a lot more community activities than today. People were out looking for things. The war had ended. There was a period of jubilation, and another community such like Lime Mountain and Ross's Point would be Osable Forks, where these people were just far enough away that when they had things local, the people got into it and wanted to do the best they could for that particular place. And I said, yeah, we were into baseball and basketball, the old CCIL league and these places here. Buzz Herrica, when he was principal at Ross's Point, was a baseball coach. And I go through some of these, as I've noted, see the names, and then all of a sudden comes back, yep, here they are.
Yep. Al Rose still live in Dannemora?
No, Al's in Plattsburgh.
Remember, he was up here coaching for years and was formerly at St. Mary's in Champlain, was a great person, a great personality, and a great family. And his boys went on to be good sports, and then went on to college, good students, too. Well, somewhere along the line, as you know, record keeping, we haven't heard your wife's maiden name or what her name is that you married.
Well, it sounds almost like a disease. It's a Pickersgill.
Pickersgill is her last name?
Yeah. And we found out there are some that work for the Canadian government there in Blackpool. And I can't think of his first name, but he'd married a girl here from Plattsburgh. And when they found out that my wife was a Pickersgill, who originally came from the Leeds area of England, they were interested in it. And my wife is not that interested in the family history, although last spring when we come back from Florida, in the Philadelphia airport, there was a place there where you could pick up your family crest, so she did.
What's her first name?
Eleanor.
Eleanor. So
Gertrude.
Gertrude
Gertrude Eleanor.
Wait a minute here.
Gertrude Eleanor.
Okay.
Her mother's name was...
Wait a minute. This is a record keeper here.
Yeah, you throw that out there.
You want us to take that out of this tape? We're going to leave it just like that.
You leave it in and all that. This wasn't rehearsed before.
That's right. And even experts make mistakes, right? You and I.
Yeah. Good. See, I did have her name or something.
Tell us now, where was she from when she came to school in Plattsburgh?
Well, she was originally out of the Utica area, West Winfield. And her father come over here as a young man from England at the age of 11 because he had reached the maximum education in England, and it was either leave the country or to go working in the coal mines up there.
At 11 years old, he had reached the maximum?
Yep, in England. So he came, his father was over in central New York, and he got a hold of his father, and his father said, well, come over to America. So he did, and he worked as a youngster down in the central New York area. Lived there all his life, and he married into the Ray family, R-A-Y, and my wife was one of 3 members of that family. She came up here to college in 1943 and graduated from 1947. And that's when I came on the scene, more or less. She was at college here in 1946 when I got out of service. We got married here in Dannemora, and 48, had a double wedding. Thought we'd save money, but...
What do you mean a double wedding? You didn't get married twice.
No, we had another couple.
You married Eleanor or Gertrude both?
I married Gertrude at that time.
And who'd you get married with? Your brother or somebody?
No, there was another couple. He had been in service, played baseball and basketball with the HS, and Mike Ryan. Mike was in the Navy. He was also in with the air fleet. Got shot down in the Pacific by our own people. It's a sore subject with Mike.
By our own people,
yes. I was talking to him yesterday. He just hates to get into discussion of this, but it's made a block with him as to his service.
Okay, so of this marriage, how many children?
We had 3.
Okay.
Robert is the oldest, and he is a correction officer down at Mid-Orange in Middletown area. Our second son, Preston, who played baseball and basketball here at DHS, is living in White Plains. And our daughter, Colleen Rabideau, she works at the Bailey Avenue School as the school secretary.
And her husband said is George at the police department.
George is retired. George Rabideau retired from the police department and works now at the border.
Now, several times you mentioned DHS, Dannemora High School. There is no such thing anymore, is there?
No, we centralized with Saranac here a few years back after quite a furor over different things, but it goes back into the idea of having your own. And one of the things that people missed here in the debate was that when this school system here decided to increase the school itself from a wooden school, we went into the brick school, which still exists. During the Depression, they had to get the money to do this with, so they got a hold. Bertrand Snell from Canton, was it? Gave him he lent the money to the school district and had a 30-year thing on it, which was from 1932, let's say, to 1962. And in so doing, if the people had centralized it prior to that time, they would have had to pay off a school in Saranac and the remainder of the school debt here, so they'd have had two. And that was more or less the big bone of contention.
Okay. We'll take another short break and come back and talk about how he became a historian and what he's done up to this point before we get into World War II.
Let that guy in.
Yeah, that's not somebody knocking on the door out here. We're in the home course of Terrance and Gertrude Eleanor Gilroy, and they're getting a roof done above us, and you'll hear some nailing now and then. And you tell us about this. You said you kind of got a roof problem here over the weekend.
Yeah, with all that rain we had, we were just lucky we weren't like in Vermont though. Our roof leaked, and I said you could take 2 showers, and one in the tub and the outside. But we had contacted. We knew we were going to have a problem, but we just didn't expect it was going to be of that magnitude.
Yeah.
And
You're fortunate to get it done so quick.
yes.
Find somebody who could get here and do it,
Yep.
Okay, there came a time as you were working, you had children, that you became interested not only in military, but of history. And was this much before you became village historian?
Well, 25 years ago was the historian up to that time, Ken Boise, decided he would get out of the job because he had retirement plans, and decided, well, he was doing things that he found he was interested in, but not so much, let's say, local. It was out of the area. And when he resigned, the mayor at that time, Bill Dunn, said, would you like to be the village historian? Well, having lived here, and one of the things I was interested in, what can I do with the time I have to go down? And one of the incidents was, what does the village name, where does it come from? And what is the meaning for Dannemora? And again, like doing World War II, I went down and found there was nothing there. None of the people who had been historians previous had marked these things down, although since the village had been in 1901, these records are, if they're available, are well hidden. And so I got into it, and we talked with people and talked and wrote to people from Denmark, or Sweden, I should say, and reason why Dannemora, New York, and Dannemora, Sweden are, in a sense, sister communities. We've had people stop here. I have things of the mines in Dannemora, Sweden, which related here, I think, with the beginning of this community here when it was in the town of Beekmantown. The mines were here. The ore was a valuable asset. The state of New York decided to build a third prison. They got into Ransom Cook from Saratoga Springs to do a research of mineral rights in the state, and he came up here. And there had been people living here, not too many, but there was enough. And so when we got into discussing this with these people from Sweden, we found out that it's a combination of 2 names, Danne, were people from Denmark. They were Danes who went up into that section northwest of Stockholm and got into mining iron ore. And M-O-R-A is a derivative of, I don't know what she meant by a fenny spruce tree, which was native to that area. And the pictures we have are almost very similar if you look at it as Line Mountain.
So that's how you got your name of Dannemora. All right, now, I heard that the reason you went into being a historian is because of the money.
Yes.
That you were looking for a big retirement, and you figured you'd put that money away for retirement.
I put it away, and like the records, haven't been able to find it.
Is there any salary at all?
There's no salary.
No salary.
I do get money that allows me the privilege of using tax money to go down and get reprints of material that we can document and put on file.
Yeah, lots of hours too, huh?
It takes about 36 hours of research to do a year's newspaper.
Yeah.
So,
Well, let me ask you: do you have an office as such as a historian?
no.
You have no museum or anything in the for the village of Dannemora?
No.
Is there a town of Dannemora? There isn't a town of Dannemora, is it?
Oh, sure.
Yes, there. All right.
Yeah.
Is there a town historian too?
Just appointed.
Uh-huh.
Just recently appointed. My brother Carlton was up to a few years ago, and because of other activities, he decided he couldn't handle it. I think the county historian told me, I think it was Sue Toloski is just taking that over. I may be wrong. It may not. I don't know. It might be Eleanor.
It might be Eleanor. Now, there came a time that you decided that you wanted to, you were mentioning off camera, you wrote a book, or got involved with a book on the Dannemora prison. That's available at the, I guess, at the Clinton County Historical Society, Clinton Prison at Dannemora. It's I don't remember the price, but we $8.50, and it's Clinton Prison, a special exhibition, the prison band, and then I know Helen Allen. Is she the one that did the actual writing on it, or
Well, with a combination.
you and she? And this has got great pictures. That if you're interested and you're down, it's on the corner of Court Street and Oak in Plattsburgh, and they'd like to sell some more, obviously. This picture was one of the pictures shown to us at the prison pictures we saw 3 weeks ago with Peter Light, I think it was Peter Light, and that's one of the pictures. And we recommend that to you. We're not here advertising books, but we recommend this if you're interested in history at all. And how much time would you get involved in something like that?
Well, that was over a period of time when Helen Allen decided that should have something here at the county level regarding the institution, and I don't remember now how much time we did. We put a number of hours onto it doing the research. There was a couple small mistakes in there, but of little consequence, really.
Now, there's a book here at St. Joseph's Church. Were you involved in that too?
Yes, that was.
As historian?
That was the first thing that we got into, is to doing, when about 1980 we realized that the centennial of the church was coming up, and Irma Brusso and I decided that we would get together and put this information down so that the people could have it. Nothing had been printed up to this time, and we were just...
And there's just a lot of information in here. Again, are these available now? Still?
No, those are out of print.
Out of print. I was going to get one, but they're out of print.
Yeah.
Okay, and of course this is in the spare time that you have while you keep other records. And then the third one, that's not very long ago, I saw in the Plattsburgh paper that books would be available by village historian Terrance Gilroy, coordinators on the village people of Dannemora. And I think it said $4 or something. So I said, get my check in the mail right away, and got one of the first ones off the press. It was mailed to me. And it's a great, it's not all encompassing, not supposed to tell you everything from, but it's about 30 pages, 42 pages, 47 pages. Is it still available?
No, that's out of print.
That's out of print. And they mentioned there weren't too many copies, so I got my letter right in. Now, Mrs. George Rabideau, that's your daughter, and Mrs. Trelane Rabideau, Mr. Trelane Rabideau, and Mrs.
Grandson.
Franson.
Grandson.
Oh, I'm sorry. And Mrs. Robert Mayette.
Yeah, her mother was a village treasurer here for years. She was a school teacher here in Dannemora.
Okay. And that is out of print, but you can probably see it in the library somewhere.
There's copies in the library.
Uh-huh. And how many did you print of that?
We had over 500 copies of that.
You wish you'd have made 1,000 now?
Well, I don't. It wasn't like Gone with the Wind, so I don't know. We would have been left with a number of copies. With like with the church history, what we did was a pre-subscription campaign, and if you wanted a copy put in, and then we knew what we were coming up with. The printer did allow us extras when they read them off, and so we made out all right.
So now that more or less I think will bring us up to date on Mr. Terrance Gilroy as far as what he's been doing, his family, and the books that he's been involved with, and keeping all kinds of records in addition, of course. So we'll take a short break here and come right back, and we'll start talking about his interest in World War II even after he got out. Took us a long time to get to what we came for here, but we've had a very important and very interesting discussion here with Terrance, of course, about the various things that led up to this. Have you always been interested in the military once you got out? That's the best time is when you get out.
Yeah, that was the best time. Yes, I got out and got interested in Veterans Affairs. Belonged to VFW and the DAV and the American Legion. And like I say here, getting involved with local people. Been the county commander for the Legion, and one thing just leads to another. It's you know these people, and you get to know Truman Murray, Gerald Mayo, and these people here, and you see the change come along and what happens in these organizations to keep veterans alerted to what's going on. It's interesting, and combine that with local history, the Battle of Plattsburgh, the Battle of Valcour Island, the natural history we have here is something. And not only that, is the beauty. Last night I come down off the mountain up here, and this whole Champlain Valley, it was unusual in that it was so clear. Champlain College there, Clinton Community, these places stood out just beautiful in the mountains in Vermont. We had a reunion of our Navy squadron here in Plattsburgh in 91, and these people were flabbergasted at what we had here for beauty. One couple come up from San Antonio, and they told me at least 6 times, this is the most beautiful part of America.
It's hard to for us, we people here, who live here, to realize this sometimes. We see it, we look at it, don't see it. Right over the top of it. Yep. Sometimes right here in your own street, very quiet street here. How long have you lived in this house, right?
We moved here in '59.
Okay, so your family was not necessarily raised here, yes?
Yeah.
Yeah, they were raised here.
Our first was 40. Our first son Robert was born in 49.
Okay, so he was 10. Yeah. So you're raised. All right. So you decided to start keeping some records way back then of various.
Yeah.
Well, let's Rick Monday while we're talking about.
Oh, you want to talk about Rick Monday now? And that is not 2 days ago Monday, but this is another. Tell us a little bit of the story of Rick Monday.
Well, when there was the confrontation nationwide was going on, and the burning of the American flag and desecration of it was starting up, more or less like Vietnam and in that era. Rick was playing with the Dodgers out there in Chicago, and some people jumped out of the stands, and they were going to burn the flag there in his area. And he just went over there and took it away from him. And, of course, it's got quite a bit of notoriety, the American Legion, and these people decided that we had an individual who thought that much of the flag to put himself into danger with these people, not knowing what they had or what they could do. He did save the flag. And so, in a continuation of this, we brought this up here at the County Legion. And eventually, when the next visit for the Brooklyn Dodgers, the Los Angeles Dodgers, we got permission to go up to Jerry Park. Henry White was there from Moore's, and there was 3 of us, and we presented him with a plaque thanking him for having saved the American flag from desecration at that time.
Now, Rick Monday, of course, was an outfielder with the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Los Angeles Dodgers.
And I remember one time, I think he knocked the Expos out of the pennant race one year, as I remember.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yes.
80 or 81.
80. We're talking way back here now, you know.
Ancient history.
Yeah.
You mentioned you and Henry White, and there are three of you. Who's the other guy?
Yeah, who's the other guy? We better...
Hook Delaney,
From where?
Plattsburgh. He was an old 26th infantryman.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I was trying to think what was his name and besides Hook, because he got that from playing baseball, and he was one of those individuals who went over into North Africa with the 26th and Kasserine Pass and those places. And
Uh-huh. You know,
Harvey.
I can remember there was a Plattsburgh State at the time, I guess, parade in Plattsburgh, coming up Broad Street, and I remember somebody had a flag, and were using it as a shirt or something. They had it wrapped all around them, and I said, that's not right. And I really considered going out and taking it off of him. And I said, I'll probably get flattened by. They think that's there's nothing wrong with that, but it just didn't seem right. Have they passed laws now to really prohibit this?
they're looking for an amendment, and it's still going on.
Right.
I think one of the few places that has not decided that it should have a constitutional amendment is the state of Vermont. I don't know just how many. It's almost to the point where it will be conceivable and included. I don't know what was the last on it, but the Legion, the VFW, DAV, veterans organizations, and a lot of civic organizations are disturbed that this symbol of America is being desecrated in the light of free speech, which we don't agree with.
Yeah.
And it's even to the point where, in some of our churches, and I know the church right here in Dannemora, they're taking the flag out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One organization, and it's a good time to bring it up because they've been so free with the flags and passing them out. That's the Woodmen of the World.
Correct.
Their biggest symbol is giving flags, and they give flags continually. Calvin presented a flag. I don't know if I'm going to know the story now. Was it New York City or Montreal?
Both.
Both.
Lake Placid.
Lake Placid. Calvin went up and presented. Cooperstown, he's presented all these flags for the Woodmen. And it's just a great, great thing, and there's nothing more important to me. Now, why does each person think their country's flag, I guess, is the most beautiful thing? But it's awfully hard, as I look at a red, white, and blue lines, these stripes, and then the stars, to think of a more beautiful flag rather than just a symbol. It's a thing of beauty, I believe.
I had the opportunity here a few years ago to get down to Greenwich, New York, to present a program down there during that Vietnam era where the students in the school wanted the American flag taken out and to do away with the Pledge of Allegiance. The Washington County American Legion chairman had asked me to come down, and we did. I did a thing on the history of the flag and more or less why desecrate our flag. And we had some veterans from the Vietnam area there, and we presented maybe an hour, 15-minute program. Never found out till about 3 years later, the result of it was that the students turned right around. They then wanted the American flag left in and the Pledge of Allegiance. But before that, they were just being misled by people who, thought it was something cool to do to destroy what we have preserved over these 200-some plus years.
Okay, now where were you when the VE Day came in?
BJ.
I'm thinking of VE.
Okay.
Where were you at VE Day when it came?
We had returned from overseas, from North Africa, and we were down in Norfolk, Virginia, when victory was declared in Europe. And we then left there for Norman, Oklahoma, and we arrived out there after having gone to a couple other bases. They looked for places to more or less hide us or decide what to do with us. And when VJ Day came, we were at Norman, Oklahoma.
Okay, so you had mentioned that before, I guess, that you were prepared. You thought of going over to the Pacific Theater. You remember, now, we were talking earlier about the days off camera. I've always considered VJ Day August 15th. And I've been corrected here in a little calendar. Apparently, the war ended August 15th. I guess the agreement to surrender. But the actual surrender proceedings and the official VJ Day is September 2nd.
Yep.
We just saw in the American Legion magazine, or was that VFW?
VFW.
VFW magazine calendar. So the official day is September 2nd. Do you know of any official ceremonies going to go on in the county for that this year, being 50 years?
I'm not aware of any, to be truthful with you, no.
Uh-huh.
I heard nothing since we returned this year. I feel it's too bad that there isn't something to be done. But I have heard nothing of any of the veterans organization getting together to have something available for the general public.
Uh-huh. Now you have, it'll be something on TV, of course, the various programs. A&E probably have, they celebrated, I shouldn't say celebrated, but commemorated the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki the other day on a program. I think there was one on last night and I didn't get it all. But you are in the process now, you have several notebooks here and albums, and you've got various military information. What are your plans for this, what you have here? What's the story here?
Well, my real concern is that I can go and locate my grandfather in the Civil War locally. If you get the 1880 history out, you can locate his name there and stuff. I can't document my own service in World War II. And so I've decided that I would take the time to document these things that are in the newspapers and the list of people that we have who did give military service during that period, which I am covering as of December 1st of 1941 through December 31st of 1946, hoping that eventually that we can get all of this compiled and make it available to libraries and those people who are interested in having a copy so that they can, for whatever reason, whether it's their personal reason or some family tree that they're trying to build on, that this information can be obtainable. And I think it's the same with the Korea and the Vietnam situation where these people should be located locally. The discharges were recorded at the county clerk's office, but what we found there was that there were some that stayed in, and let's say went in 1945 and did 20 years, so you wouldn't find their discharge down there in the World War II. Some just never did put their discharges in at the county clerk's office. There's a listing there, but I decided, well, as long as they weren't available and where I could get all of these, the only way I can do it was to go back through the newspapers and document day by day those insertions that were there.
All right. Now let me ask you a very simple question. Are you doing this as village historian Terrance Gilroy, or is Terrance Gilroy individual interested in it?
Just as an individual interested in it.
Okay, so it's not a village project.
No,
it's a county project that Terrance Gilroy is interested in. Okay. Is there any way out there that people could assist you without everybody sending you their copy of their discharge, which you would already know 98% of these? How do you intend to make sure that you got everybody?
Well, I don't think that we're going to be able to accommodate that particular thing. The one thing that I'm going to do, and I've already accomplished 1943, is to go through the newspapers, and this book here is 1944. And any of these things that appeared in the newspaper that particular time, I'm making copies of so that we can put them in there and people can eventually go down, and the whole set of 1942 to 1945 I'll eventually hope to have at the county historian's office.
Clinton County Men in Service, and there was a little short blurb on each one. This is 1944, January 3rd, 4th, 5th, right on down, that he gets from some of the microfiche from the college files. And then there is, once in a while, pictures, promotion to Lieutenant Sergeant, Rouse's Point boy writes from Italy, Corporal Como, Just very, very interesting. As you know, I mentioned before, I've been going through all those North Countrymen's and Rouse's Point, along with Donna Boyle, which has been very helpful to me going through these and just checking over and over again. So many names. One thing before we get into more of this, I think there's one sheet that we saw here, and that's that one you just put over there underneath this cover. Very interesting, particularly to the North Country. Now, I assume this will probably be shown in the on Falcon in Plattsburgh also, because this is a county-wide interest. October 29th, 1942, North Countryman, Rouse's Point Draft Board lists 18, 19, 20-year-olds in order of call. And the very first name listed is Philip Rabideau, Morris Forks, number 11203. And as you peruse down here, you get down to number 11238, Carlton Castine, Champlain, New York, Calvin's father. Right here on the list. And right below him, or I could say, is a man by the name of Terrance Gilroy, Dannemora, New York, 11239. What was that number? That's your draft number. And did you get drafted by that number, or was that pulled out of the hat?
That I don't know.
Don't know. Okay. And these are various names around the area. Very interesting. October 29th, 1942 paper, North Countryman. A lot of names we recognize out here. We can't obviously cover them all.
And if they want to see it, they'll tell them where to go.
Go right over to Donna Boyle's office in the Rouse's Point Village Historian's office. She's there every Wednesday afternoon, and probably by appointment if you wanted to see her. October 29th, 1942. And there are numerous around that time lists like this in that paper. That's what's nice about old records. But records also, of course, have to take a delay now and then. We're going to take a slight delay right now and take a short break. Please stay tuned, and we'll be right back. You're watching Hometown Cable. What's going on here? Bob Venn, Calvin Castine with the camera. This smiling gentleman right here who's married to Gertrude Eleanor, his name is Terrance Gilroy. You were talking about wanting to get all this information so that you would have a book that would be helpful to many, many people. How are you doing that right now? You're going through lists. And once you go, this list you just showed me here, on the service, Clinton County Men in Service, you take that name out of there and put it in another ledger you have to make sure you keep adding to it all the time. Is that what's happening?
Yeah, I'm going to do this eventually to come up with one complete book, and it will be, let's say, in two parts. One part will be those that were like killed in action. Second would be like missing in action. Then the various awards, Distinguished Flying Across, Silver Star, Purple Heart, all of these portions there. And then the second part. First part is quite easy, and I think we're probably about 97% through it. The second part, which is taking the most, is to do this town by town. And we just finished one here the other day. My daughter came up and we've put these names here for the town of Altona on the list here. So, and as you can see, I've added in some already. We're going to have to do the advantage, of course, with this is that instead of typing these names all up and adding them in as we find them, we'll be able to take the disc out and come back up through with any additions to that.
Do you have the computer, or just your daughter's?
No, I got a computer out here that we'll use. And there's records available here. Now here's the list that was filed with Post 20, July 18th, I think it was 1986, to the county clerk's office. And there's some 1,300 names here. But one of the...
By town?
City of Plattsburgh.
Oh, this is city.
This is Post 20.
Yep.
And there are names that should be on there. I don't know if I added it over here. Brannigan. No, it's probably over on a little further. But for whatever reason, Jim Brannigan was never put down on here. And so this list is incomplete as to that go. We found that in doing the same here with those people 50 years ago who went into service, were not accorded the ability or have the ability marked down that they had served in the United States. This here, I just noticed my brother-in-law, John F. Bailey. And
Now, who is your daughter is working with you on this a lot?
yes,
'Cause my first thought is, we're not getting any younger. You could have, or I could have a stroke overnight, and forget that portion might forget everything. What would happen to years and years and years of work? She knows what you have in mind, for instance, so that's at least two people involved, because otherwise it just it would mean nothing to anybody else. You know, a lot of work. But once this gets finished, and I would always worry about, do I have the last name, or is there more yet? You know.
I think there's always going to be people that should be incorporated into it, but just how we're going to be sure that it's 100% accurate. The only way I could see was that we would publish the findings, and then those people who had a chance and were not recorded in here, what were eligible for this particular time period. See, as I said, I started in 41, December 1st. There was people who were the selective service list had gone in before. I met one the other.
And served through 45, right?
And if there was no notice in the paper, then I have no way to know that they were there. And then what there could be would be an addendum to this whole thing and made available as we did with it.
Now you take someone like, let's say, Frank Cavanaugh. We've talked to Frank Cavanaugh. He was at Pearl Harbor, Mitcham Field, what's the other field? Higham Field, on the day of December 7th, 41. Right. So it means he was maybe in 40, 39. Yeah. He was from Alexandria Bay area. Now lives in Rouse's Point. Would he be in Champlain at all? He was never here until after the war. He wouldn't be in the book like that, would he?
No.
Okay.
No, it'd be Clinton County residents because...
At the time they went in.
Right.
Or while they were in, okay.
Because there were some who would say, well, why don't you do Essex County? And I said, well...
Let me see that just a second. Let me give you an idea of you people who don't gather information and wonder how this is... Look at. Now these are all things that have been gathered, and now will have to be put in 1, 2, or 3 places, maybe the article in one place, the information in maybe a couple other places, right? A name in a list, the date, whether they were in the Navy, that's in a different list you have, when they got out, where they served, and so forth.
I'm not going to do it by service branch other than what would be listed.
No, but I mean, if you, like their name, you have only their name here, right?
Yeah.
But someplace you're going to have their name, and you're going to have what service they were in, and you're going to have a list for those who died separately.
Right. Yeah.
You have no idea what it takes to compile. You're not writing a novel here like a fiction or anything where you can just sit down and rattle it off. It takes an awful lot of information, and it's like a genealogy. Look. And as I and Calvin do, and I'm sure Terrance does, you write yourself a little note, and later on you say, what does that mean? Because you didn't really spell it out. Do you have anybody else picking this information up for you? It's all
doing it by myself.
Yeah.
And what you got here...
Look at that stack.
This is information that runs from January 22nd, 1944 through February 14th. You got to go through and find this information and make a copy of it, and then cut it out. And there's paper all over the floor.
Yeah, you got to go through every microfiche, and the microfiche gives you the whole blow up of the paper. And then you got to go through every page to see if there's something on it, the page that you want. Then you got to make a photostat of that.
And once in a while, I put some of this stuff in advertisements.
The prices, yes.
Well, just to show the difference in what was being expended at the grocery store in 1944 as what we have today. You know, molasses at 18 cents for a 15-ounce bottle, and pure vanilla 27 cents.
Yep. Plattsburgh Press Republican, January 27, 1944.
And like I said, the other papers are on microfilm and that have been produced in the county and the North Country. Not only Plattsburgh, there's others, there's Champlain and and these other newspapers, that if an individual is interested in, can go back and document these things. I documented my great-grandfather who had died up in Black Brook in 1867 by the name of Trumbull, who had been born over in North Hero in Vermont. Made a copy of it to do the family tree. But all of these things are available if the people get into it. And
Yeah. Let me ask you now, this is confession time now. When you're going through 1944, 41, and you're looking for all this information, and you come to the sports page, you don't just go right by there, do you? Do you sometimes read about Dannemora High School and because it's interesting at the time?
I have other, what I want to say here, photo albums that I've recorded village history in, yes.
But I don't mean just for record, but just because you're wondering when you were playing and some of the buddies were playing, you know, and you just say, you know, Pesky Fifield from Plattsburgh was playing. I remember him or something. That's the name I just came right off the top of my head here. And you don't just read what you're looking for because there's something interesting about an accident that you now know who it was. You didn't know him at the time, but you now know the rest of the family. These are things you pick up in the old papers. Well, before we take another break, what is this? Where'd you get this?
This is a model of the planes that we flew in the Navy, the Ventura.
This is a model you made?
No, my grandson
Made
Terrance did that for me. He put those together. We just found they were available here when we got into doing reunions for our Navy squadron, and he painted it. And
see, here's the turret that he mentioned with the, you know, swivels, and that's where you were. Right where they could see you, and the first thing they're going to shoot at, of course, is right there. They want to get rid of that because they're the one that's bothering them. And the wing propellers. And then here's your bombs, you see here? You carried 2? Or were there 4?
We had more than that
More
in the bomb bay.
In the bomb bay here?
Yeah.
That could drop?
And there were more, well, we were depth charges more or less. I think there was 6 that we had in the racks.
How often did you fly?
We would fly probably on the average when we were over North Africa at least twice a week.
Rest of the time you did what?
Well, we had classes to attend, you know, gunnery classes, airplane recognition.
Ongoing
stuff there.
And
we had, you know, maintenance of equipment, like ordnance, the guns we had to clean, get the cosmoline off, and we had people who were bore-sighted the turrets. They were involved in that. The radioman would take care. We had to clean the planes, wash them down, go down there and load them up, and when as ground crew and air crew were combined.
As you look around the home of the Gilroys here, first you see the picture, that very prominent location. This was up on top of the china closet. You see a Navy anchor over on the side, and over there we see another plane, and we see military up here. When we come back, we're going to talk about this display you've got up here. Maybe that could be interesting. Talking with Terrance Gilroy. Please stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're going to talk a little bit more about VJ Day. This year celebrated September 2nd, 1995. 50 years. On the screen, you see a couple of clippings. What are we talking about? Why do we have these on the screen, Terrance?
Well, this is one of the things that was given by people from the county here that has been lost, and the only way you will find it is either talk to some of the relatives or go through the newspapers to pick this stuff out. The individual now, Harold Leahy, while a resident of the village of Dannemora, he now lives in San Antonio, and he went down here, graduated from high school, 1939 or so I think it was, went to Plattsburgh Normal, graduated there, went up and taught and up around Lake Placid, and then when the war came on, as with General Manor, these people decided they would enlist in the service. And with Harold's situation here, he went out to the Pacific in October of 1942 and never left the Pacific until 1945. He was a pilot out there And as the clip shows, he was awarded the Oak Leaf Cluster and the Distinguished Flying Cross and the Legion of Merit, and he was probably one of the county's most decorated heroes of that time.
Okay. There's still family members in the area now?
Oh, yes. Yeah, Plattsburgh, Dannemora.
Uh-huh. Is he still living?
He's still living. We had a program here a year ago in which he was up for one of the few times since he left in 1942, and we had a dinner up here at the Knights of Columbus. Being the individual he is, when he found out we had put this dinner on, he said he wasn't going to come to it if it was just for him. So then, in order to get away from that, I said, well, we included anybody that served in the village of Dannemora during World War II.
Okay. You have others like this now. Here's another. We'll get this. 10-star dad honored at banquet. Tell us about this.
Well, this was held at the VFW in Plattsburgh. Commander Hugh Kelly, who his son Richard still lives in Plattsburgh, and at that time they decided to have honor these people who had multiple family members in there, and this was the Mashter family from Point of Rush, who had 10 sons in service at that time.
Huh.
So there was others, the Fifields, as you mentioned. There was 6 Fifields in the 5. The Preniveau brothers, I think there was 5 of those in there. The Tobins from Katyville, I think there was 5 Tobin brothers.
I see that Joseph Preniveau of Oak Street. Now, I knew some Prenivaux who later, and a man by the name of Adrian Preniveau went on to Tupper Lake. His dad used to be a barber in Plattsburgh. Could very well be that family.
Could be.
That Preniveau, that's not a common name around Plattsburgh.
Quite a few Trudeau's in, too.
A lot of Trudeau's. Eh? How many in your family, do you know?
I'm not sure how many were in.
That from around this Point area, that's Calvin's mother's family, brothers.
This is over here in this side. You'll notice this is out of the Bradenton paper, and it talks about one of the first of World War II casualties from Clinton County. As Mr. Kelly here, Hugh Kelly, who was the commander of the VFW, presented that 10-star award. This was in June of 1942 when his son took off with a plane, B-24 I think it was, off in the Bradenton-Sarasota airport. The plane flipped and crashed into the Sarasota Bay, killing 8 people, I think it was. And I went down after I located this and decided I would make a copy out of the Bradenton paper relative to this. Also, those members that lived through the crash.
Now you see, you don't just take one picture either. You see how these various pieces, in order to get the full article, you've got, for one reason or another, you can't get the full page because it doesn't take that big. You don't have to have a little portable copying machine, do you? A little tiny one. You could just move right up on these columns. It works real well. I have one that belongs to Donald Boyle, and I use it once in a while when I go out and pick up articles like that. Edward Leonard Beaudet is missing in action. Is there any story behind that one that you know?
Nothing other than that.
Missing in action, probably. Would you have information now whether he was found, or whether he was declared passed away? I mean, from your knowledge, you don't remember that, huh? Okay.
No, that's what I said. There's so many that you.
Oh yes, it just goes on and on.
Here was father of 7 that.
Spooner. Moors in Peru youth are prisoners too. Now, this is January 3rd, 1943. 2 previously reported as missing, now in German prison camps. One of those may have been Burl. I haven't read this article yet, but there may have been a Burl. Spooner. Oh, I can't read it. It's real small here. Okay, we're gonna get these all out of order for you.
No, that's all right.
You realize?
They're not
Okay.
in any order.
Okay. Okay, this father of 7 killed in action. Moors in Peru youth are prisoners. They were formerly missing in action. I guess they were Clinton, I can't quite read it, of Peru, Laurie, and Private Wellington J. LaPlante of Moors. Also, Bernard J. Lamora of Marshallville had been reported wounded in action on the Western Front. These were in the paper every day. And go back and see these, and it's history over again. And many people don't want to talk about these. We've asked repeatedly for people to come forward to talk to us about, some of their experiences and their friends in the service. Here's another one, 1943. Group from Rouse's Point left yesterday for Camp Upton. 37 called, including Philip F. Anktil, Rouse's Point, Calvin's father-in-law. And then we mentioned before Morris Trudeau, his uncle, from Rouse's Point. Harold Yell from Moore's Forks. Stanley Manette, Rouse's Point. Vincent Joubert, West Shazy, and 33 others. It's interesting to go back and see these names you did not know then, but you've learned over the years, and you wouldn't have even paid attention to his name at the time. But now you're doing it. Very, very interesting, and I'm looking forward to seeing this book come out so we can buy this and have it and all in one place, Terrance. Okay, what else do you have now?
Well, here's the one thing I was looking for. This is, of course, Champlain youth was Ensign Arthur Atwood, is now deemed lost. What is that?
On the Corvina, April 1944.
44. So he'd been missing for some period of time, and I didn't have a date of death for the individual, and looking for it and inquired up there. Lo and behold, when I got a newsletter from the Sampson Navy base that we had during World War II, an individual did a listing of U.S. submarines that were sunk during that war, and he listed the date that Arthur had died. So now we were able to put both his date of death, and we will record it in there, even though he was out of the area at the time. I feel that he was a Clinton County youth who gave, and this way here at least we can honor him. And we'll do this with some others, such as the members of the 26th Infantry who were stationed at Plattsburgh and lost their lives in the various battles.
It mentions here that this was the 20th submarine lost in the present war. One of them was the USS, I don't remember the name, but it ended with Swordfish, I think. And my cousin, Thomas R. Collins from Plattsburgh, who attended St. John's, was known as Chip, was in one of the submarines, lost and missing in action, and then a year later declared dead and never heard from again. Here it is right here. I didn't know you had that. Here it is right here. It's the reverse on this one. You got white on black. Thomas R. Collins. Thomas R. Collins aboard the submarine Grampus. Well, I wasn't very close. Reported missing in action. His mother, Mrs. Emily Collins, was my mother's sister. And there's the article about that back in November 1944. There was an article in Life magazine about the ship just before it was lost. And this is what you have. And when you take these pictures, I took an awful lot of these on one of these machines until I found out you can reverse this and put black and white, because these don't hold up very long. But there's his picture in the reverse. Well, I didn't know I was going to see that. My first cousin. Didn't know him very well. There were only 3 boys in all of the family, cousins, and I'm the only one left of the 3 now. Again, you see, things like this you will see about your friends, relatives, when this is published. But I just can't explain to you, I can't emphasize the amount of work and the sleepless nights that you think about this when you go to bed, right? When you go to work on this until 11 o'clock, you go to bed, you say, now, what I should have done or what I'm going to do tomorrow, and you lie there for an hour thinking about it. Did that happen to you?
Yeah.
You want to believe it. I keep some records, and this is an awfully big undertaking that he's got here. because you're not restricting it to one town, you're restricting it to the whole area. We'll take a short break and come right back to you where we're talking with Terrance Gilroy. We're going to talk some more about World War II. So to North Countryman, it wasn't an article on page 3, it was the headline many times. But here is one here that says, Corporal Gerald Burrow died on the Western Front. Champlain soldier's second casualty. His brother is a prisoner of war. That brother, who was a prisoner of war, was said to have been killed, missing in action. Then they found out he was in, and that's Leslie Burrow's brothers here, who still is, in and around Champlain. 5 Prenovo brothers are in the Army. I may have to look and see what their names are. That may be one of the ones I told you about before. Now you have something here that you...
Well, this was the this is the list as the New York State Division of Military and Naval Affairs has listed. I put it all together rather than the way they had it. And down here you'll see I added that they had a total of 118 names, which says that this is killed in action and dead and missing. And my records here, as I said, indicated over 230. There's some of these, as I mentioned, the records at Clinton County down at Trinity Park missed names. There's also the list that was handed out when we had the celebration September 46, in which names were there but missing in the others. So the records are not that accurate in a sense. I have tried a couple of times to reverse what I asked for the first time, and this is all they have. That's it, as far as they're concerned.
Let me ask you now, some people over at my house last night, Alfreda Willette, Smiley's, Mrs. Smiley, and Teresa Leahy, her sister. And we were talking, and they had a picture, I had a picture they were looking at, of the old honor roll in Champlain that was unveiled in 1943. And she was wondering where it is now. It was veiled or taken down in 1947. Have you any idea in any of your talks why they would take an honor roll down just 2 years after the war and not leave it up there for a while so that continue to honor these people? Of course, they had a prominent place, and Rogers Point did the same thing. They unveiled, and then they had a veiling committee that got rid of them. Did you have one in Dannemora?
Oh, sure.
You still have it?
Nope. They did the same thing there. Within a couple of year period afterward, it was up here right next to the town hall, right next to where the bank is. And of course it was ancient history.
2 years, yes. Yeah, ancient history.
And I think one of the things is that, there was a period of time between World War I and World War II for people to remember any of these things. And the World War II veteran come back and, well, it's over with and let's get on with something else. And I said, you talk to people who were there, and they, hit and miss here. They wouldn't really get into that. And let's get on to something else. That was then. What we're doing now is more important than what we did then. And the World War II veteran lost an awful lot of credit and things, like I say, with these things here, you just can't locate them. He's lost things financially because his voice did not speak in Congress. If they were injured in service, they come back and said, well, let's buy everybody out at 10%. And whatever method they use, bringing in doctors from other countries who couldn't talk English, and you get into a discussion with these people, the guy would just as soon quit rather than get into a prolonged discussion relative to what he had done. As a fact, the last 2 nights ago I watched here and had never seen this. It was Russian films and German films of the Russians taking into Berlin, and the viciousness of that has to be seen in order to understand it. And a lot of people had problems, mental problems afterwards. Those who were at Pearl Harbor when these things exploded around them, they just lost their confidence and come home. And I said, we get into this discussion of, were we proper in dropping the bomb? They say, well, it was a moral thing. Well, we never get into, was it morally right to drop the bombs in Pearl Harbor? had the Japanese decided that they wanted to cripple us, all they had to do at Pearl Harbor was to have blown up the fuel depot. They would never had to have killed one individual, and our Navy and stuff would have been grounded right there. We had no reserve.
But it would have been as devastating as far as the U.S. is concerned. You'd lose your thing, but it wouldn't be, when you kill people, it's a little bit different, you know? And now, I lost my train of thought of what I was going to ask you now. They still, the latest hassle here about the bomber in the Smithsonian Institute. I know most of the organizations like the VFW and the American Legion think it's silly to not repeat history the way it is. It's what happened, you show it, you know. Oh, no, what you talked about, that's what I wanted to ask you. This show you said you saw a couple nights ago, was that Battlefield? PBS. It was 6 nights, 6 Mondays in a row.
Yep.
I recorded 5 of them. I don't have the number 3, I guess there's 4. I missed that one, but it's a great program. I thought it was great. Calvin's running right now, one on, has been running. It just finished, 7 parts. It's called Why We Fight. A great series that he got, and that was been showing on Hometown Cable about the whole war situation. And we're not trying to honor the war. That's not the idea. We're trying to remember the people that were there and gave a lot the important years of their life. Terrance, that was some of the best years of your life. You were, what, 20 years old?
Yeah.
You know?
That's what it said, right?
20 to 22, 23 years old, you know? And really didn't know what it was all about, you know? But you do have some respect for it. All your memories there, I think it's great. How did you happen to have this meeting, 91, I think you said, in Plattsburgh when your squadron met? You take turns going to different places?
Well, I've been more or less involved in our reunion since we got started. We've had 2 in Pensacola, 1 in Washington Navy Museum, 1 in Plattsburgh. We just had one last March out in San Antonio, Texas, and right now we're looking at something for next year. It may be a 3-day cruise. It may be go someplace like Philadelphia. We let the people that are in there decide where they would like to go. And as I said, brought them here basically. Again, it goes back to historical stuff. The Navy is there, but if you ask people where did the United States Navy get started, they have no concept of it. And said, well, the Georgia Pacific was kind enough to put a thing out front, welcome VPB 127, the birthplace of the United States Navy. And there was those that said, what did they mean by that? Well, just what it said. Benedict Arnold out here at the Battle of Valcour Island was, in 1777. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, right in the backyard.
Yeah.
How many in the squadron? How many would you have in that group of yours?
We have, right now, we probably got about 120 some odd names with addresses. We've missed a lot due to the death toll that's taken place over these 50 years, but we're talking 120, let's say 120 names.
So how many would show up at a place like that?
The last one we had 75.
Yeah, that's good representation.
Yeah,
good representation because they're getting older. They're not as well as they had been. Yeah. We'll take another short break. See where we're going to go. We're going to be ending this up in just a few minutes, but please stay tuned. And we'll be right back. We're talking with Terrance Gilroy, the village historian, and his hobby here, I should say, and his desire to make known all the people, to honor all these people in our county who served in the war between 1941 through 1946. Stay tuned. In between segments here, we've been looking through another series of names, and we see Roy Manor leaves for cadet training. What year was that? 1942. Tell us about Roy Manor.
Well, this tells here that he's just left to go to Burlington to get into the Air Corps, and he had been a civilian pilot and been married, and he granted his license June 17, 1941. And there's a little stuff here. He'd been employed at the Cumberland Hotel. He was injured shot up during the Normandy invasion, And as we know, probably General Manor was one of the most distinguished of our World War II veterans. And Charlie Gata was able to get a road named after him here in the town of Dannemora and down into Beekman Town. He's a native, lived down the road down here and on the way down on the old French settlement road, as they call it. But he was really with Harold Leahy and some of these people, some of the first to go in. We did have one who was a young individual here, Hubert Spence, and had Hubert, who was in the same time as these people here at the normal school, ever lived, he would have been equal to these people in their ability for our military. The problem with Hubert was that in his cadet training down in Texas, his plane crashed and Hubert subsequently died at that time.
Now, Roy stayed in the service, right? He retired.
Yes. Yeah.
Lieutenant Colonel or
General.
General. And oh yes, wasn't he also involved in that attempted rescue
Right.
in the desert?
Right. Yeah, they went in, and I think that that time, well, shortly thereafter, there was a program down, and dinner program down to the air base honoring him when he come back from that.
Yes. Now he's not in the area anymore. You said he's out of the service,
Out of service.
retired, and then gone to another area now. You said.
Yeah, I don't have his present, but the brother is still around, up around Canton, Potsdam, and Larry, who was in the BCI and things.
And I wonder if he's related to Andy the Man or is up into the Moores area. Probably is. One of the interesting things about that little article we just had on the screen was you mentioned he probably never even seen it
I would doubt it.
because he was in the service at the time, and he never did come home to stay. So his mother, unless she sent it to him, he probably never even read it.
Yeah.
A lot of things like this, and it's so easy to just throw these things out. You know, if you've got something that you find in a box you get at an auction or anything like that with anything to do with military, don't just throw it out. If you can't think of anything else to do with it, with your village historian or town historian, send it to Terrance Gilroy in Dannemora, New York. You take it, you'd be glad to get it, right? If you don't need it, then you can give it to somebody.
Oh, yeah.
Because it may be something he can use. You going to say something, Kel? No? Anything else you want to cover before we call it a morning? How far are you along in this? You're talking 97%, you think?
On the listings, yes, I think that is well documented to that degree. You might run into some who, we had one here, I think a little over a year ago, got his Bronze Star, but he accounted for that. He went down, he had a problem, went to the Veterans Agency there in Plattsburgh, and said, well, you are eligible for this. Of course, there was nothing in the paper at that time, so there'd be no way that I would know that in 1945 that Rolly Bond was eligible for the Bronze Star. And a lot of these things goes on through the years. They bring them up, and all of a sudden here they are awarding these people with these things. So it's almost an impossibility to be 100% accurate, but will be accurate to the degree that we can. And like I say, if we get there and when this is printed, and there are people who subsequently did come from Clinton County and served in World War II from the beginning when the draft board took names until after the war, then we could probably make an addendum to that list and send it out to those who would wish another particular copy.
In addition to this project, is there any other projects you're working on right now as a historian?
Well, we just, more or less, we're winding up the 18th of the month with a dinner for the sesquicentennial of the prison down at the college. I'm also, like here, I just received a phone call as to the Battle of Plattsburgh. An individual is interested in that. And we talked earlier about the naval history here on Lake Champlain, and I think that we miss so much in that we don't do enough to let local people know and people outside the area that what happened here when Benedict Arnold and these people at Lake Champlain prevented the British from going down and subsequently letting our forces at Saratoga or Bemis Heights bring the British in, and they had an uphill battle. Had they gone down at that time, probably things would have been different in this country. Benedict Arnold, although a traitor to our cause, did give us that time to reflect on how to fight the British. The only monument that's there is out on across the island from it, and it seems too bad that our local history is not recorded any better than what we had for World War II. I suggested to one time that the motto of our county government should be the beauty spot and the birthplace of the American Republic, because we are that, I believe, and I don't think there's any prettier place going in with our history, local history, on these plots. With Pike's Cantonment, the same thing, and there'll be more on that, as mentioned here, having found the fort across the Saranac River, which will now document the exact location of Pike's Cantonment with the Battle of Plattsburgh, and the units that we've had here at the base are something. I have things here on the 26th Infantry, the 5th Infantry, and these others. And as I run across them, I try to save them, and so you stick them up here in the book. Sometimes with so many stickers on there, I have to eventually go back and review these things to make sure I know what I'm talking about. And that. Some on the prison, state hospital, and these. So it's a varied. I keep interested in a varied group of things, not only World War II, but personal history, family history, and.
Yes, some of on that display up above, what does that represent? That's your Navy emblem you have up there?
In the middle of the ordnance with a bombing, as it was supposed to be a flaming bomb, and then lower right, the white was the gunner's patch we had, and the little over in the right-hand corner, that was all of the bases and dates that I was on, and I just shrunk it down so we could have it. And then the ID badge, it was a 5-franc note from Bank of Morocco, the dog tag, and the medals that I was entitled to. The thing was that I had never received my medals up till a year ago, and a fellow from Texas had asked me about it, and I said, well, I never did receive them. So he said, well, just write in and ask what you were entitled to receive, and they sent me the 4 in the upper left portion of it.
Are you ever bored, Terrance, that you can remember? People say, I don't know what to do, and I get so bored and nothing to do. You never have that problem. You can't possibly.
No, I just don't find enough time to do all that I'd like to do. I feel it's too bad that these things weren't recorded previously, and like I said, going down there and finding things on Dannemora, I could have read them and probably wouldn't have been interested in getting any further into it. But
and you feel a need, obviously, that it should be there. It should be there,
right,
for those people.
We help students in schools here who do things locally to have it available. As I said here, people don't understand these things, and I feel that if the time I can spend there, and they're looking for it, if they can go over, let's say, the village office or through a publication and reduce their expenditure time by 50% or 100%, I feel I can do it. I got the time to do it, and glad to be able to accomplish it.
Well, we've been very fortunate to have talked with you, giving us as much time as you have on this, I guess it's the 9th of August, on a Wednesday afternoon at the home of Terrance Gilroy, the village historian and interested in so many things. Retired from as a correction officer. He's married to, what's her name?
Gertrude.
Gertrude, and has a family, all in the area, just about, all right here. And it's nice to have all your grandchildren nearby. And with continued success with your book, I hope you're going to make it known to individuals some way that these are available. And every village historian in the area, probably, obviously, and even in other counties, will want something like this. And I'm looking forward to it. And I know the amount of work you're going through, Terrance. Thank you very much for everything. And anything else you want to cover?
I'd just like to thank you for helping me out in this, because there will be people who see this and are interested in it, and maybe we can pick up additional
I
information.
hope so. I hope there's some way you can. If you have any questions, call Terrance here in Dannemora, Gilroy. Another thing I have in the back of my mind, I'm not sure. I think I'll ask you anyway. We would like to do something on the prison life within the walls. Would it be possible to talk with you sometime about the interior? What happens in a normal day, and is that information that shouldn't be out to the public?
Oh, no. No,
You know, I mean, we talked with Peter Allen, looked at pictures, and I deliberately refrained from what does the prisoner do when he gets up, what time he gets up, what time he goes to bed, what's he doing at 11:30 in the morning, what choice. These things we never covered. I think people out there would be very interesting. And what happens within a prison wall, not only to the prisoners themselves, but to the people who work there. Do you sleep good when you get home at night? What kind of feelings do you have? Do you feel sorry for them? These various things would like to talk to if we could sometime. We've talked about that, Calvin. Sometime when you get a chance, maybe we can sit down. Maybe you've got pictures, interior or something sometime.
It's the mystery of what goes on. Like I said here just recently, the Adirondack Heritage Architectural went through and they interviewed, and I said, well, when you deny people the right to freedom, it gets to be something that you conjure up in your mind. And I think that the people know what goes on in there. There's no problem with that. The thing is that a lot of people have an idea that, it's always dark and ominous in there, and then when you get telling of the funny stories, they just can't believe that.
Uh-huh.
The same way with when I worked in Lime Mountain, and people did not understand how the mine would operate, is getting that ore out and stuff. And it's the same way here, and it's too bad. The state said, in some sense, well, you can't divulge some of these things because obviously, there's people going to take advantage of it.
Yes.
But generally speaking, the day of their incarceration, no problem. What they ate, and how they got up and dressed and so forth, and the changes that have come about
That's what I was
in
thinking.
institutional
Yes.
life.
Okay. Well, we'll look forward to seeing you again on that. And thank you people out there in TV land who watch our program every Sunday and watch Hometown Cable every day for the various programs brought to you by Sam and Calvin and other contributors, people who donate their time, like myself, trying to keep you abreast of what's happening in the North Country. Your comments are always appreciated, always welcomed. They don't have to be always glowing. We're constructive criticism is always welcome. Your ideas of where we can go next is always interesting also, and we're trying to show you what's happening in the North Country, particularly up into our townships where Hometown Cable is seen every day, but also people in Falcon territory will probably watching this also. There's a lot of these programs. We've done over 370 interviews such as this, and we've covered a wide area of topics. We appreciate your comments, and don't forget, none of this gets done. Well, I can donate my time. Calvin can't quite do that. He uses a lot of his time. So if you aren't already a patron to Hometown Cable, $12 or more once a year to Hometown Cable, 1477 Ridge Road, Champlain, New York. He and his whole family would be appreciative, and you will feel better about watching this every week and every night, and know that you're part of it. Hometown Cable, become a patron. See you next Sunday. Well, you've just seen the second of 3 parts of our show at the Plattsburgh Air Force Base. We've been talking today with Peter Glashko, Lieutenant Colonel, and with Staff Sergeant Peter Garnett. And you just saw the big tower, and we're going to come back here, and we're going to be doing a third show, pretty all about the flight line and things around the flight line. And that'll be probably next week, so please tune in next week. And during the week, look for the many shows that Hometown Cable has on of your friends and neighbors from the North Country. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Hometown Cable. Our show is called What's Going On Here. I'm Bob Venn, Calvin Castine with the camera, and if you were with us the last 2 weeks, you know this smiling man from Shazy, New York is Staff Sergeant Peter Garnett. He's a historian here at the Plattsburgh Air Force Base, and we're going to do the third segment today in and around this tower. We're going to be looking at the hangar. We're going to be looking at the flight line. The other side of the flight line, going to show us the control tower. So please stay tuned, and we hope you enjoyed this. And if you have any comments, Hometown Cable, 1477 Ridge Road, Calvin Castine. Give him a call, drop him a note. While you're sending the note, before I'll tell you early in the show, send $12 or more, become a patron. This is going to be a good part of the show today. We're going to show you about everything else that we can possibly show you at the Plattsburgh Air Force Base. And Peter, any opening remarks for today's show?
Well, it's a little cooler today. No, we're going to have a good show. This is fun.
Good. Okay. We'll be back.
And by Ford Motor Company of Canada Limited, makers of the all-new 1997 Ford Escort.
Reasonable question. All I'm saying. I would have asked. All right.
Okay.
So she said. I mean, you've seen her, right?